Here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast, we have been celebrating women in the dairy industry all month as part of Women's History Month. And I can't think of a better way to round out this month than with my guest today, who's writing her own page in the history book, the Holstein History Book. In the Holstein Association USA's history, there have only ever been 10 CEOs of this organization since its founding in 1885. And my guest today just took her seat as that 10th CEO. She is an industry leader, a self-proclaimed genetics guru, and a former college classmate of mine from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Let's welcome to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast today, Lindsey Worden, CEO of Holstein Association USA Incorporated. This episode is brought to you by Zoetis. As the world's leading animal health company, Zoetis is dedicated to helping producers achieve healthy animals, healthy dairies, and healthy food through their world-class portfolio. For more information, visit dairywellness.com. So Lindsey, so excited to have you here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast today, and great to reconnect because not only, as I mentioned, are we college classmates from Madison, but what you may not know is I actually knew who you were before that because you were at Badger Dairy Camp, weren't you?
Oh yeah, yep. I went to Badger Dairy Camp a couple times.
So this is going back to like 1999, 2000 maybe. So I was the little farm girl from southern Wisconsin, didn't get off the farm very much. And I heard that there was someone at camp from New Mexico. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never met anyone more exotic in my life. I thought it was pretty exotic to meet somebody from Illinois, like my roommate at the time at Badger Dairy Camp. That was Molly Sloan now, Molly Florent back then. But what fun memories from dairy activities way back in our youth. Do you remember who your roommate was from Badger Dairy Camp?
I think it might have been Linda Bailing one of the times because I met Linda and I became like pen pals, and Linda's cousin was there as well. And I got pretty close with both of them through Badger Dairy Camp. So that is a small world. That's cool.
So Lindsey, certainly no stranger to the dairy industry and definitely no stranger that you are to the Holstein Association. In fact, you have been a part of the association in some capacity for almost 20 years now, right?
Yeah, it'll be 18 years this May, but it's the first place that I worked after college, and I've been here ever since.
And long before you ever started working for the association, your whole history involves Holsteins. And so is there a memory that really stands out for you of maybe your first Holstein or one of those first Holstein experiences that you hold dearly in your heart?
I've got a couple of core memories, like from when I was quite young in New York, but one that is, I think back on fondly is, it was my first memory at a show. My parents showed at the Broome-Tioga County Holstein show there in the southern tier of New York, and I got to go with my dad. We stayed overnight. We ate at Burger King on the way there, and we didn't eat out very much, so that was a novelty, and we spent the night in the barn in sleeping bags, and we had some cows there, and I had a heifer that I was showing, and I remember I showed in the Little Britches showmanship. I think there's a picture from that day that's still one of my favorite pictures. But I remember one of my parents, I think, was giving me a hard time that I was going to get in trouble in showmanship because I didn't wash my heifer soon enough, and my heifer wasn't going to be totally dry when I went in for the showmanship class. So that like stuck with me throughout my 4-H showing days, was that you needed to get up and wash your heifer early so that they had time to dry before showmanship.
So, Lindsey, we've mentioned both New York and New Mexico here. So can you connect the dots a little bit and fill in the blanks of your background in both of those states?
My parents are both from New York State. I think they both went to a New York State Holstein meeting or something, but that's how they met, was at a Holstein function, and they started farming on their own in the early 1970s. I think 1974 is when they established our farm, Warmont Dairy. They were working on my father's farm. My father grew up on a registered Holstein farm. They also had some really elite registered shorthorn beef cattle that they showed. So my dad's always had a real passion for genetics, and they split off and started farming on their own in the 70s, and I came along about 10 years later. So they had a small, I would call a pretty traditional dairy farm in southern New York there. They milked 65 cows, all registered Holsteins. My family was quite involved in genetics marketing at that time, and So like I said, I've always kind of had that in my blood. And then one summer, my parents, they dispersed their milking cows. And, it's hard for dairy farmers to take a vacation when it's a family farm. And so anyway, they sold the cows. I think they kept part interest in a couple of their best cows. They kept their heifers. And somehow we took a big family vacation. We went up through Canada and we came down through the Western United States. This would have been in the early 90s. And visited some of my parents' friends out there. And my dad just got very interested in the Western style of dairy farming. He just was on these farms out there and just thought that was very interesting. But anyway, they decided that they wanted to move our dairy farm to southeastern New Mexico. And New Mexico was a really expanding dairy area at that time. I think there's a lot of farms going in there in the early 90s. And so it was about 1994. They moved our 65 cows and young stock and myself and my 3 younger brothers down to southeastern New Mexico. They'd worked with another local dairyman that helped build dairies. And so they built on a flat site, a brand new dairy. And at their largest down there, we milked about 1,400 cows. And so everything, it was almost all Holsteins. We had about 100 jerseys, I think. Everything was either registered or basic ID'd on the Holstein side. And the jerseys were all registered as well. So we kept definitely the genetics piece going, even though it was a larger farm. And so I was really involved in 4-H growing up down there. We didn't have a lot going on with registered Holstein activities, but my parents stayed active with the association. Like I said, we kept the cattle registered and we did some showing and things like that. When people ask me where I grew up, I say I grew up in New Mexico because that's where I have most of my memories. And I graduated high school down there as well.
Wow, Lindsey, what a big move that must have been for not just you, but your whole family. And I just can't imagine what it would have been like to be in some of those conversations with your parents as they were planning this move from New York to New Mexico in the 90s at a time when there probably wasn't a whole lot there yet, but they had the vision and the foresight to see what could be possible for dairying there. So when you think about your parents, how would you describe their personalities and their mindset when it comes to the dairy business, especially back at that time?
So my dad is definitely an eternal optimist, and he's definitely always wants to push and do things different and try new things. And my mom has fortunately always been very supportive of him in that. I wouldn't say that she's quite as aggressive as he is sometimes, but she's always been very supportive. And when we moved to New Mexico, she still had, a lot of farm wives feed the calves. She still managed all of our calves. We had a few hundred calf hutches, and she managed the employees that helped with the calves. And she takes a lot of pride in still overseeing that part of the business today. But I mean, I really can't imagine what it must have been like just packing up and moving, 4 little kids, getting the kids, aside from the dairy piece, getting your kids settled into a new school, not having the family, we didn't have any immediate family support down there. So it was just a whole different ballgame, and managing all those employees, the cultural differences, adjusting to that. So some people, I'm sure a lot of people thought they were pretty crazy. I think there was definitely an element of courage, but it was a really cool way to grow up. I really enjoyed the style of dairy farming out there. And I think if I was going to be on a farm, I like having a lot of cows that you can manage from a genetic standpoint. It's very interesting. I'm interested in leadership and management. So I like the aspect of thinking about the personnel management piece.
So Lindsey, like you said, there wasn't this strong community of Holstein and dairy youth activities where you grew up. So is that kind of what led you to start at a young age already looking at National Holstein as a place to plug in, to find your people, to find resources, to learn more about the things that you loved?
So my parents, helped us with dairy judging and things like that. And I remember using Holstein Foundation dairy judging workbooks down there. Our 4-H extension office had them, and my parents used them as tools to help us. And so, yeah, it just really helped build that connection. And I really think that's a big reason that I'm obviously still involved in the dairy industry. 2 of my brothers still farm with my parents, and I have a 3rd brother who works for Valley Ag Software. So all of us kids are still involved in dairy on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's because we were able to build that connection with the animals and understand how our animals fit into the bigger picture. And that was something that we all just really developed a passion for, and we're all still very engaged with today.
So then you really started embarking on your professional path, your career in the dairy industry. And it started out as an intern with Holstein, didn't it?
My first job title was the Holstein Foundation Youth Programs intern, and Kelly Dunkley was my boss for that summer, and she was wonderful. She is still a cherished colleague today. So that was the summer before my senior year of college. I did the Holstein Foundation internship. So got to work a lot with the Holstein Foundation Youth Programs and National Convention. and then just see the other side of things that went on here in the office. And then my last week on the job, John Meyer, our former CEO, and Jody Hoynoski, a longtime colleague, took me to lunch at a restaurant here in Brattleboro, and they made me an offer to join the Holstein Association full time after I graduated. And so I took a little time to think about it, but I decided that was something that I wanted to do. And so the role that I came into when I started full-time was a communications role. So when I was in college, I double majored in dairy science and life science communications, probably the same as you. So I had that communications background, and that was something I've been interested in, as well as the communication side of things. So I started out as a public relations specialist. And then after about a year and a half, I got promoted to be our communications manager. So working with our website, the Holstein Pulse magazine, I set up our first Facebook page, got us started in the era of social media back when that was kind of a new thing. And I stayed involved with Holstein Foundation programs as well. And so I was our communications manager for, I think, about 5 years after that. And then we had a key staff member leave the organization, and that caused John to kind of look at our organizational structure and do a little bit of reorganizing. And at that time, he created the Holstein Genetic Services Department. Genetics, as I said, it has always been a real passion of mine. And so I decided to, hey, I've been doing the communications thing for quite some time. I thought that the genetic services role sounded very interesting. So I decided to interview for it, and I was chosen for that. And so Holstein Genetic Services is the value added things that Holstein does. After an animal gets an ear tag and gets registered, most of the other services fall under genetic services. So classification, genomic and genetic testing, software programs, awards, things like that. And that was really neat because that really started to expose me more to the business side of the organization. And I really enjoyed that. We had a lot of fun projects that I'm really proud of that we accomplished. And I was in the genetic services role for about 10 years. And then it would have been 2013, John Meyer decided to move back to Wisconsin, where he has a lot of roots, and he decided he was going to work out of our Fort Atkinson office in southern Wisconsin. At the time of that transition is when he promoted me to be our chief operating officer. And so at that time, I essentially became responsible for most of the day-to-day operations here in Brattleboro and a couple other things under my area of responsibility. So it was a really good training wheels for the role that I'm in today, because, just kind of got the chance to lead important projects, have increased responsibility over time.
So from the Holstein youth programs and the PR side and communications, getting into genetic services and then being the chief operating officer, all of these experiences that you had, Lindsey, they really gave you an in-depth understanding of the inner workings of the association and all of the players in the game. Was there a point along the way where you started to see that at some point you could be sitting in that CEO seat?
It's definitely not something I thought about all along. John Meyer was such a figurehead in the organization, and he was always just such a constant presence because he'd been our CEO since the early 2000s. So I didn't really think about what was going to come after John until I would say the last few years, when it became apparent that he was getting closer to retirement. I started to think a lot more seriously about what those next steps would look like. But that probably wasn't until about 3 years ago that it kind of occurred to me that, oh yeah, John isn't just going to be here forever, and what's that going to look like afterwards, and how might I play a role in that? So when I got moved into the chief operating officer role, that was a big step in that direction. And there was a whole process involving the board of directors, of course, that kind of got initiated early in 2024 when John had notified the board of what his plan officially was. It's been an interesting couple of years. Over time, I feel very fortunate. John and others here in the organization, they gave me a lot of responsibility over time. And sometimes I didn't always feel like I was ready for it, but I said yes anyway. And I definitely think, having the opportunity to lead different projects, lead bigger projects, be responsible for managing larger teams, definitely John was outstanding about intentionally creating opportunities for me to grow as a leader and a person here. And so that definitely helped give me the confidence when the time came that, hey, this is something that I can do. And I definitely felt like I'd put in the work and I'd had the opportunities. And like I said, it gave me the confidence that I was ready for this next step.
So in the 140-year history of the association, there have been 9 CEOs. You are number 10, Lindsey. And when you look toward the future of Holstein Association USA, What would you say are your three major areas of focus, your three objectives that you're really honed in on for a strategic vision in the next 5 years?
Number one is definitely partnerships and collaborations. I think they've been very important to a lot of the successes that we've had up to now, and I think they're going to be very important for our future success. So really just looking for other organizations that we can collaborate with, where we can use our talents and expertise to really add value and help both of the organizations move forward. So that's definitely number one. I think number two is really instilling in every part of the chain the importance of individual animal identification. I think with the situation that we're finding ourselves in now with avian influenza is a perfect example. Holstein USA has been a longtime advocate for an official animal identification system in the country that would be government mandated. But even without that, I truly believe that farms that have excellent animal identification and can trace that animal from birth through end of life with one unique number, I think that's going to be a point of differentiation. And I think, again, farms that can prove that they've got excellent record keeping, excellent animal identification, that's going to be something that they can use to say, hey, I've got the highest quality milk you can buy from me. Here's how I can prove it. And that's something that can differentiate them from their neighbors. So I think just talking about that message and having those conversations is going to be very important. And then I think the last piece is just really, trying to remain innovative, developing new programs, products, and services that we can use to help the farms that work with us be more successful in their businesses. That's something that we've really worked to do over time. And I think just, again, continuing to innovate, make sure that we're not being stagnant and that we've got a great team here that can support farmers in whatever their business goals are.
So when you talk about these partnerships and identification and programs, these three big focus areas of your strategic vision of leadership over the next 5 years, Lindsey, let's talk about the partners first. What type of partners are you looking for, and what do you hope to be able to achieve through some strategic partnerships?
As it comes to partnerships, like I said, just looking for areas that really enhance what Holstein brings to the table. So that would really be our expertise in animal identification and databases, record keeping, things like that. I think there's a lot of organizations. All organizations are trying to do more with less. And so if there's ways that we could perhaps collaborate with a smaller organization and offer them better services that might be in a similar business to what we do, I think there's big opportunities on the software side of things. We've got a big project going on where we're rewriting our entire herd book software, and we're starting to roll out the first pieces of that. So I think that's something that there's a demand for, and that's globally. There's a lot of herd books around the world that I would be very open to collaborating and say, hey, we've made this investment, where are you at with things? Can we work together? And things like that. So kind of a confined focus, but it's an important one. There's a lot of herd books that serve a lot of farmers around the world, and how can we all work together better to be more efficient? And then I think there's a lot of opportunities on the animal identification side. There's developing countries that don't have any identification systems. Again, that's our area of expertise. So really just trying to figure out what do we do better than anybody else, and how can we share the resources that we've developed and help other people get to where they want to be quicker, and again, just allow both of our organizations to move forward.
Oh, Lindsey, and you said something there, what can we do better than anyone else, right? So it's that Jim Collins good to great model. So what do you believe that Holstein USA can do better than anyone else? What are you best in the world at?
John Meyer liked to say a lot that he always worked with the best people, and that would be our staff here at the Holstein Association, and for the best people, our members. So I think a lot of our strengths lie in the people that we have. We have a lot of people that have worked for the association for many, many years, and they're really experts at what we do. And so at the end of the day, animal identification is our business. Genetics is our business. And keeping all this information in a database that is really I like to call ourselves kind of a third party that a farmer can put their data into. It's backed up, it's safe. Our only interest is helping farmers be as successful as they can, whatever their goals are. We're not trying to sell them a particular product to make them money. I mean, our product is animal identification and registered Holsteins. And so really just being that unbiased party that a farmer can come to and get advice or do an audit on their herd performance. Things like that, I think, are all areas that are really our expertise. We've got a lot of expertise in doing genetic evaluations. We've been doing the genetic evaluations for confirmation traits for decades. So we've got 2 full-time geneticists on staff. And so that's something that we're very interested in and want to keep innovating in. So yeah, really identification, genetics, dairy data, records, all that is within our sweet spot. There's a lot of different companies offer different tools, whether it's in genetics or herd management softwares that are essentially, at the end of the day, they're very similar. They're just under different branding and they've got some different features. So I think it needs to be something novel that's not necessarily replicated. And I think an advantage that the Holstein Association has is just the different types of data that we have in one central place on animals. So we have their identification, their lineage through their pedigrees. We have performance information through their milk production, calving information for animals that are classified. We've got data on their physical conformation. So we have a lot of information here. And then, of course, you've got the genomic data to layer on top of all of that. So I really think something that, as we think about where's the industry going with genomics and new programs, there's a lot of mating tools out there. And I think there's new technologies coming along with genomics, with sequencing and things like that I think we've got the opportunity to develop some next generation mating tools, I would call it, that would tie in all these different types of data and really help farmers be in control of that if they would choose to be. There's a lot of different organizations out there that will do matings. People do matings themselves on their farms, but really just making tools available so that if people want to have full control of what's going on with the genetic program on their farm, they've got this unbiased tool that they can have access to that uses all of the data that they've collected on their animals and has it, again, available in one centralized place without having to upload files or ship their data somewhere. We've already got it here. So how can we layer a tool on top of that helps farmers take ownership and control of their genetic program? So that's just one example of something that I see coming down the road.
So Lindsey, when you really think about the things that you have seen in 18 years of working through Holstein since you and I were in college together, number one, we did not even have social media back then. But number two, and probably more important for this discussion, is you got to have a front row seat for the introduction and implementation of genomics. So what were some of those early conversations like?
It's really interesting and it's fun to think about this because when we have new employees, we do a new employee orientation and we've got a section in it there that talks about our genomic testing programs. And I was talking with our program manager and I was like, we need to write a little book about this because someday, the young people coming up these days, this is just the way that life is for them. And yet, once some of us get older and move on, what it was like. And so Holstein Association USA has been part of the conversation literally since before genomics was incepted. So those early conversations with USDA researchers as things were being developed and researched. I wasn't personally part of those conversations, but as a communications person, I got brought in relatively early because it's like, hey, we're going to be offering this new service. How do we explain to farmers what this is? How are we going to package it and market it? And, what materials do we need to develop to support this? So I was able to be part of some of those early conversations. And to me, it's just really incredible to think back that on day one, genomic testing cost $250 per test, and we only delivered results 3 times per year. So back in the day, I'm pretty sure our first reports were just paper. We stuck them in the mail. We eventually moved on to spreadsheet reports. But it's really amazing to think about how not just the Holstein Association, but the whole industry has changed and adapted to where we are today, where we've got a multitude of suppliers. There's affordable options through many suppliers, and results are literally delivered every single week now. And so I think it's very cool to have had a really front row seat to that evolution because it's been a pretty incredible ride and it's really taken place over not that long of a period of time when you think about it.
So if you were to write that little history book on the progression of genomics and the acceptance and how that changed over time, what are some of the highlights that would be from those early years in that history?
Yeah, I would say probably like a lot of people, it definitely took some time because there were so few animals being tested in those early days. But once, some of the more affordable options became available, companies like Zoetis entered the space and really drove genomic testing on the female side. We really started to get a lot more data over the course of just a couple of years. And so I think just really being able to see the data on the female side and see some of the early comparisons that were done of here's how genomics rank these animals for their predicted transmissibility for milk. Here's how they rank based on their actual milk production. And similar things for fertility traits, like seeing that real data side by side, it's like, man, this is really cool. And then just seeing farms that implemented it at scale and talking to them and they're saying, we're seeing this. It might not be perfect for every single animal, but when you look at things as a whole, like this is a really valuable tool to make decisions. And then just looking at on the bull side of things, just the amount of information that we had on these younger bulls and seeing how they proved out. Again, it's not perfect, but in a short period of time there, it became pretty easy to see that this was a tool that was really valuable.
Lindsey, you just mentioned Zoetis as such an important player in the growth and expansion and acceptance of genomic data for dairy producers. And that is a partnership that Holstein Association has had for quite some time with Zoetis. And can you talk a little bit about that partnership and also specifically how you've seen it drive value and improve profitability for the dairy producer at the end of the day?
So I feel extremely fortunate to have been involved with Holstein's partnership with Zoetis for many, many years, since the very early days now, 12 or 13 years ago. And I think that what makes our partnership special to the Holstein Association is that it's really built on a shared vision. And that's helping dairy producers make smarter, more informed genetic decisions that are going to help them drive their business forward and have success in the long term. It's not just about a quick win. It's about how can we help them build resilient, sustainable businesses that are going to last a long time. And I think that applies to where we've been in the past, where we are now, and where we're going in the future. So the most visible part of our collaboration has been the Enlight program, and that was one of the first really big projects that I was involved with on the Holstein side. And so Enlight was our web-based program that was really a first of its kind tool to deliver genomic results to farmers through this online platform. So getting it out of the spreadsheets that they were emailed into something that they could log into 24/7 and really make that tangible for them so they could use it for decision making every day. And it really revolutionized the way that farms were able to access their data. I know on the Holstein side, we were manually emailing out spreadsheets every week with results. And so it would take a couple days to get everything out versus, having Enlight updated within an hour of getting the new results located or loaded into our database. And so we developed on that for about 2 years internally with a team that had people from both organizations working really hard on it. And then we launched it publicly in June of 2014. And so that was really the public announcement of our partnership and when we started offering the clarified genomic testing and things like that. And so then I think farmers having access to tools like Enlight and then later Clarified Plus, the dairy wellness traits, dairy wellness profit dollars, I think all of those things just really help Holstein breeders be in the driver's seat to be able to make these data-driven decisions that are going to help their business.
Lindsey, I know you've always loved genetics and you continue to own some cattle as well at your family farm. So do you play around with the genetics a little bit and genomics personally, not just at work?
We missed this part of the story, but when I was in college, my family moved back to New York. So they farm in central New York now. They actually ran both operations together for about 2 years, and then they fully sold the place in New Mexico. So my family farms in central New York now. My parents and 2 of my 3 younger brothers, they milk about 250 Holsteins. I've really got one cow family in particular that I've focused on, and it was a cow. I'm not sure exactly the year, but I've been working with this cow family for like over 20 years now. And my parents had a partnership with a couple of their friends in New Mexico and bought a really nice cow named Dot King Kemview Kayla. And they took turns flushing her, just conventional flushing. Back then, IVF was not nearly how it is right now. And so they took turns flushing her. And so we had these 2 heifers by Homestar outside. And at that point, I think I must not have had like a nice animal or something. And so I was looking at what my parents had in their heifer pens. And I'm like, hey, what if I don't know if I like said I would trade some other animals for this one heifer, but I said I really like this one heifer, and her name was Warmont outside Caitlin. And so she's really like my foundation cow. She went on to score 92 points, and I bred her down, and she was a really nice cow, but she had a really low rear udder, and so I kept trying to breed her to high rear udder bulls, and I'm still kind of working on that. But anyway, I'm several generations into that family now, and flushed each generation, and kind of had like a key animal move down through each generation that I've worked with. And so, I like cows that are nice looking cows that are going to perform well in our classification system. So that's something I focus on. But I also, TPI is the Holstein Association Selection Index. I really believe in that in terms of profitability and productivity. And so I look for bulls that rank high for TPI in particular, that have nice fertility, but also are solid on the conformation traits. So they're going to have great udders, good feet and legs, and the body traits that I'm looking for in my cows. So I think a lot of people kind of call those crossover bulls. That would be what I'm looking for, but really focused on my one little cow family here. My current cow I'm working with is a sire by a bull called Movin', and she's a red carrier. So that's kind of a different twist. And I bred her to a red carrier bull, and I had a black and white calf who's being genomic tested now. So we'll see if she's a red carrier herself, but trying to go a little bit different direction just to diversify and do something different. But I do like working with that family. I think it helps me stay really engaged. I use our Red Book Plus online program when I'm trying to find what bulls I want to use. So I'm not just on the development side of things. I'm actually a customer as well. And we've got a few staff people on here that are like that own cattle themselves. And so they're users of our programs as both members and people on the development team. And so I think that helps us develop better programs that are user friendly, that our members can use to make those good decisions. I don't get to the farm as often as I would like to. So my husband and Randy and I, we visit on holidays and things like that. But with my travel schedule, it's hard to get there as much as I would like. So I rely really heavily on the genomic information. Obviously, I talk to my dad and my brothers about what the animals look like. But at the end of the day, I really do look at their genomic profiles when I'm trying to figure out what weaknesses I want to correct for. Even with the conformation traits, I rely really heavily on that data because I know that it's reliable and it's solid.
So when you think about the ideal Holstein cow, the true type model, and I see one behind you on your shelf there, and then you think about the cow that you're breeding for your family to milk for you in their herd and the cows you want to breed from, how close is your ideal cow to that true type model? What is your ideal cow?
I don't have a picture right here in this office of the Bonnie Moore version of the painting that we did of the new true type cow that we released several years ago now. But I really like her because she's a beautiful cow. She's beautifully marked. She's got the nice traditional Holstein markings with a little bit of flash to it. But I love her because she's very balanced. So I think in terms of what I think would be great cows for my family to milk, they're going to be successful and thrive in their freestall environment. It's going to be a cow with balance. So not overly tall, not narrow. She's moderate stature, great strength, an outstanding udder. So I think in a lot of cases, our modern true type cow, I'm sure she'll adapt and change over time. Some people would say that if she was running around in your freestall, you'd like her to have a little bit more body condition. That's fine. At home, our cows eat a TMR, so that's generally not a problem with them. But I think having the balance and the strength to survive in those environments, a great feet and legs to carry them back and forth from the parlor, and a great udder that's going to support giving high volumes of quality milk are going to be things that are going to be important well into the future.
So when you look back on how far we've come in the last decade or a little more, look ahead to the future, the next 10 years. Where do you think genomics will take us? Where do you think genomics would take the future of the dairy industry?
I think genomics is going to continue to play a massive role in the industry as it has. And I think that's a big part of the reason why I'm so optimistic about the future of the Holstein breed. I really think my goals might not be the same as the farmer down the road or, the farmer that's milking cows in any state. Everybody's got different goals. And I think that's an awesome thing for our industry. If everybody had the same goal, there's less room for everybody. So I definitely support diversity of goals. But I think whatever type of cow that farmers think is most profitable on their individual operation and is going to help them meet their goals, the genetics exist within the Holstein breed to create those type of cattle. And we've got the tools and the data to help farmers make decisions on that. So I think genomics plays a big role in the accuracy of the data and the amount of data. But beyond that, I think Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding, other organizations, there's going to be new traits that come out down the road that are going to help farmers breed healthier, more resilient cattle. Sustainability, feed efficiency, those are big buzzwords now. I think there's going to be more traits that, again, just really, really help farmers get more granular with, what exactly is that key that's going to give you the next edge or help you out. And there's going to become tools available, traits available that help with that. And I talked a little bit earlier about next generation mating tools. Again, it just goes to the accuracy of decisions that people are able to make. All of that's going to just continue to lead genetic progress to be on a fast path, faster than what we've seen. It's it's just incredible the pace of genetic progress. And I fully expect that's going to continue into the future.
Lindsey, as I just sit back and think a little bit about Holstein Association USA and what it was founded upon in the past and where you're going in the future, this is kind of how I'd summarize what I'm hearing from you today. And to me, when I think of the Holstein Association that I knew growing up, it was based upon, classification and registration. And so much of it was around establishing the standard for the ideal Holstein cow. And it gave breeders and producers something to strive for. But as you look at the tools between the data and the programs and the genetic information and the advancement, what producers have in their hands today and what you're looking to empower them with more is really all about allowing the producer to create their own ideal cow, an ideal cow that can be a match for their local milk market, for their climate, for their individual goals, for their sustainability targets. This is what I am hearing from you and what I'm seeing as the paradigm shift of Holstein Association as I remember it as a kid to where we're going and where you're leading this organization.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't have said it better myself.
So we've been having a lot of conversation today about the Holstein programs that are benefiting cows and dairy producers and advancement of the industry. But there's a whole section of the Holstein Association that I personally look to champion every time I can. And that's the Holstein Foundation and the youth and leadership programs. We talked about your partnership with Zoetis earlier. I know Zoetis has been a huge proponent of the Young Dairy Leaders Institute for young adults looking to develop their leadership skills and advance their careers, but also the youth programs, Dairy Quiz Bowl, Dairy Jeopardy, the competitions at the National Convention for these kids. And Lindsey, can you just speak about these programs through the Holstein Foundation for a moment, what they mean to you, to the organization, and why you see such a value in bringing them to the industry?
Yeah, so I'm extremely, extremely proud of the youth programs that the Holstein Association and the Holstein Foundation can provide and the staff that work on them. And they're really unique as you look about what's available, not just in the US, but around the world. Our programs are unique. And so I'm very, very proud of that. It's all about educating and inspiring the next generation. And I think, we want to create people that are going to be advocates and great assets for our industry, whether they choose to milk cows for a living or have a role in allied industry or maybe not in the dairy industry at all. But those people, if we can give them positive experiences as young people and get them excited about what we do, even if they choose to pursue any other profession, maybe they want to be a banker or literally anything else, they're still going to be somebody that has a positive memories of dairying and know how to talk about it in a way they can share with their friends. So that's really what it comes down to. And also, I think our programs, and this was a little bit of my experience, can provide great experiences for kids that maybe don't have a strong dairy program in their community. That was kind of my situation. I had my parents, and the Holstein Foundation, I feel like, gave them resources that they could give to me that really got me excited to do things. And then also, as I look at particularly out west, there's a lot of kids that are involved in programs that don't live on farms. But our programs can bring them together, give them a chance to have fun. They can learn, they can make friends. And I think that's a really positive experience, making these free resources available for anybody that wants to have them on our website. And then as I think about our Young Dairy Leaders Institute, I've been fortunate. I've gotten to attend every single class since YDLI Class 6, and we just graduated YDLI Class 13. And that's something that is going to continue to be a priority for me to attend that event. But to see how that's grown over time and the network of great young people that have come through that, YDLI graduates, you can find them in almost any organization in the industry, and in a lot of cases now, high leadership positions. And I think one thing that's very neat about Young Dairy Leaders Institute in this last class is almost half of our last class didn't grow up on a farm. So they came into dairy from outside, and they saw this program as an opportunity to build their network and gain those skills. So I think we provide great resources for kids that are in the industry, but then also now engaging people that didn't have that traditional upbringing, but we've got a place for them, and we can help them find some community and educate them, and again, hopefully inspire them to continue to do great things to be advocates for our industry.
Lindsey, I couldn't agree more as a person who grew up through these programs myself, and now in my spare time try to get youth in my local area as involved as I can in taking advantage of what Holstein Foundation has to offer at a national level and a state level. But really, Lindsey, my hope is that if there's someone out there listening that has a child that enjoys dairy, has an interest in cows, and you and I both know that when they're going to school, they're pretty hard pressed to find a kid that they're going to have those things in common with. But when they get to national convention, they find their people. And that's when the connections are made, lifelong friendships, the little spark in their eye really starts to light up. And oh my gosh, how many kids are at National Junior Holstein Convention these days?
Over 400. I think over half the attendees at our convention are youth and people that are involved with that. And that's a tremendous point you bring up, Peggy, because like for Dairy Bowl, we do have a rule that it's one team per state for the junior and senior division individually. So each state can have 2 teams, but you don't have to come up through a state competition even. So for example, 2 of our young ladies that were in this last class of Young Dairy Leaders Institute, part of their YDLI, what we call their phase 2 experience that they do in between phases 1 and 3, they brought kids from Georgia to the national convention in Salt Lake City, and those kids competed. They did all the fun things. I think they competed. So we've got Dairy Bowl, but we also have Dairy Jeopardy, and I love Dairy Jeopardy because Dairy Jeopardy it's just like the TV game show. And again, there's a rule on how many kids we can have per state just to make sure we've got diversity, but there's usually slots available. But again, so even if you don't have enough kids of the same age to make up a Dairy Bowl team, if you've got just 1 or 2 kids that are super into this and, you'd want to give them that experience, there's a place for them in Dairy Jeopardy because that's an individual competition. We've got speech contests. We've got contests like folding display where you don't even have to attend the convention if there's a travel conflict or something. So there's really a lot of opportunities. If somebody listening wants to be engaged at that level, there's absolutely room for them.
And speaking of the results of Holstein Foundation programs, Young Dairy Leaders Institute, Holstein Association resources, Lindsey, you are a product of that. And as we wrap up our conversation today, I like to wrap up with my Uplevel 5, but now that you are an executive leader of this association, I'm switching it up a little bit. I'm going to call this Uplevel Leaders Top 5. And so my first question for you is, in 3 words, how do you want to show up as a leader each day?
So I think my 3 words would be intentional, authentic, and grateful.
So who is a leader who you respect and hope to emulate in your own leadership style?
I've brought up John Mayer a few times during this conversation, but he's been such an instrumental part of my career. I'd have to say John's been the ultimate mentor for me, and I've tried to learn as much as I could through him. I have so much respect for the way that he approached business and the approach that he took to developing relationships and the focus that he put on the people side of things, not just the business side, but really the people. And I think, again, I've been fortunate to have a lot of great leaders in my life, but we've got a couple of our immediate past presidents. I'm not going to be the loudest person in the room. My style is a little bit more quiet and thoughtful. And I think our current president, John Burkett, and our immediate past president, Jonathan Lamb, they both have those similar styles. And so really just, I try and soak up as much as I can from people like that.
Okay, question number 3. What have been some of the most valuable tools that you have put into practice in developing your own leadership skills in preparation for your role today?
Yeah, so as I think about this, a lot of it comes back to, I mentioned I was very involved in 4-H growing up, and the 4-H motto is learn by doing. And I really think that's been the biggest thing that's helped prepare me for where I am now. So being given those opportunities and knowing when to say yes, even if I felt like I maybe wasn't ready for something or I was a little bit nervous, just saying yes and really just getting my hands dirty and learning through those experiences of, whether it's a software development program or when we were launching our multi-breed classification program, collaborating with the Guernsey Association, just not being afraid to dive in and just feel my way through things. And if I need to Google how to do something, I, watch a YouTube video. There's a lot of resources to learn. So I think that's the biggest thing. And as I just mentioned, I really try and find people that I admire that I think are doing things or conducting themselves in a way that I want to do, and just trying to be really observant of them. How do they conduct themselves in a meeting? How do they speak? How do they phrase things? How do they interact with others? I really just try and observe those things and try and implement those myself. We talked a little bit about Young Dairy Leaders Institute. I've been fortunate to have a front row seat to the last 7 classes. We've had a lot of tremendous speakers and people come through the program, so I can't say that hasn't been helpful for me. And then a little bit more on the business side of things, I like to read Harvard Business Review. I think they've got a lot of really practical articles on a lot of just core business subjects, and it's outside of agriculture, so it's a little bit different perspective. So that's something I like to read. And then the last thing I'll mention, this is maybe just more of a life thing, maybe than my role per se, but the book Atomic Habits has been really interesting for me to read. That really has helped me build a lot of routines that I think help me operate efficiently and really optimize my time. So that's something I've read in the last couple of years that's been something I've been able to implement a lot from in my life.
Ooh, Atomic Habits. Okay, so what's an example of a habit that you created based on what you learned and gained from reading that?
So it's really my whole morning routine is like habit stacking on top of habit stacking. So pretty much from the time my alarm goes off at 4:30 until I head out the door at 7:30 or so is a really tightly choreographed routine that I have. And that's really built on those habits. And I think it helps me start my day refreshed and energized and feeling like I've accomplished something. That's something that I'm pretty proud of how I've cultivated that in the last couple of years, because my mornings used to not be as well run as they are now.
So what does your typical morning routine look like now?
I like to get up and get some kind of movement, some type of exercise to start the day, get a nice shower to refresh myself. I do a lot of thinking in that quiet time in the morning. So I'll kind of start thinking about what's on my agenda for today. What are some things that I got to prepare for? And for some reason, I just am really clear headed in that little window of time. And then, I get up and I make a good breakfast for myself, and I just have kind of a leisurely, I make enough time that I can eat and just kind of relax. My husband's usually up by then, so, I get a chance to visit with him. I get a chance to, read some non-work emails. So just kind of read some news, see what's going on in the world, and just have that little bit of time to relax before a little after 7. It's like, all right, it's time to really get ready, get dressed, get prepared, and make sure I've got all my stuff to head out the door. So it's just a nice mix of, like I said, starting with some activity, starting to mentally kind of prepare for the day a little bit, and then just having a little bit of downtime, get some good food to fuel my morning, and then, I'm out the door.
How important is it, do you believe, as a leader to have these core routines and habits that you've built into your day to really optimize your energy and be at your best?
I was telling somebody the other day, I try and create routines I can take with me because, again, I do travel a lot, and it's very, very easy to get thrown off your routine and just kind of get rid of all these good habits you have when you're traveling. But I've found it's even more important when you're traveling to have these good routines. So whether I'm at home or whether I'm traveling at a meeting or something, I try and kind of have that same general routine. I do things in the same order. Maybe I don't get to have my nice breakfast at a hotel like I'd have when I'm at home, but when I'm traveling, I bring some food with me. So a lot of times I'll eat the same thing for breakfast in the morning. So I just think it helps me start my day very clear, not feeling like I'm in a rush or anything like that. I've gotten really disciplined with myself when I'm traveling in terms of just sleep and how I eat and what I drink or don't drink. I really have prioritized that the last years, and it makes a big difference.
And Lindsey, question number 4, what are the words that you live by and lead by?
So something my dad said a lot when I was growing up was lead by example. And maybe at the time I didn't maybe fully understood what that meant, but I think I do now, and it's something that's clearly stuck with me. So I pair that with actions speak louder than words. And so that's something I really believe in, is that how somebody conducts themselves is even more important than what they might say. So at the end of the day, those are really important to me. And then my last one I'll attribute to my high school math teacher, Ms. Ansel, and that's work smarter, not harder. I think it's important to me to work efficiently and things like that, and just make sure that we're spending our time and energy on things that add value and don't just keep us busy. And just recognizing that sometimes working harder isn't the solution to a problem. It might be better to take a step back for a minute, think about what's really going on, and then approach it in a smarter way versus just trying to brute force your way through it. So those are a few things that kind of come top of mind that circulate through my head, usually on a daily basis.
And last question, what is your next personal up level? That area of your life you're looking to take to its own next level yourself?
So I think right now I'm just really focused on fully stepping into my role as the leader of this organization. And then on top of that, ensuring that the team around me feels supported. I've got some of my team that have moved into new roles, or people that we brought into the organization as part of kind of my reorganization. And so just really focused on making sure that, people are settling into those roles successfully, that we've got a strong foundation, that I'm providing clear direction on what my goals and priorities are, and that we've got the right systems in place so that we can all move forward in a positive direction. And on top of that, also just really being visible and engaged with all of our staff here at Holstein, with the membership. I've spent a lot of time the last couple months traveling to member meetings to meet with people and kind of just stay in touch with the grassroots, and then also our industry partners, to just reacquainting myself with maybe people that I haven't worked as closely with in my new role, and just making sure I'm fully up to speed and making the most out of that. And I think, at the end of the day, so much of our business is built on relationships. And I think, I just really want to make sure that I'm listening and understanding and staying connected, so that ultimately, I can serve our members in the best way possible. So that's my major focus now, and it probably will be for the rest of this year. So that's what I've got going on.
Well, Lindsey, I'm grateful to have this opportunity for us to sit down together and really celebrate where the Holstein Association is going, and you as the person that is the executive leader of Holstein Association USA.
No, I appreciate the time. I think we've covered a lot, and I mentioned I want to show up grateful every day. I couldn't be more humbled and honored to have this opportunity, and to have the opportunity to talk with you today is a cool moment, given, as you said, we've got a long history together. But no, I'm very excited for the future. I'm optimistic. I think we're in a nice time in the dairy industry right now, but it's not always like that. So I'm very grateful to be coming in a positive time like this, but just very optimistic for the future.
And if there's anything that I hope listeners get out of this conversation today, it's that this association is in good hands, because not only are you working on yourself as a leader and building up those skill sets every single day, but you are also utilizing the programs that you're creating. You're your own customer. And I truly believe that that will continue to drive the progress and the advancement of the Holstein USA, its programs, data, our dairy cows, and those youth programs. It'll continue to drive all that forward. Lindsey, so excited for you. And thank you so much for jumping on with me today.
Yeah, thank you, Peggy.
You just heard from Lindsey Worden, CEO of Holstein Association USA Incorporated, here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please take a moment to like, rate, or review it, and better yet, share it with a friend that you think would enjoy it as well. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep up-leveling your dairy. This episode is brought to you by Zoetis, as the world's leading animal health company. Zoetis is dedicated to helping producers achieve healthy animals, healthy dairies, and healthy food through their world-class portfolio. For more information, visit dairywellness.com.